public comment on items not on today's agenda. Seeing everybody in the back row and not moving forward, we'll move on to the consent calendar. We have a couple action items and 2 action items and a report on our consent. Can we get a motion in a second?
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Again, any public comment? I'm sorry I missed that. Nope, no public comment on that. And now we are to our first of 2 public hearings, 1 public hearing today. It is a MSR and sphere review of Napa County Resource Conservation District. Can we get a staff report, please?
Your Assistant Executive Officer will be handling this one.
So I just want to mention, well, I'm just so wowed by this agency, I tell you. And Commissioner Painter was on their board for a number of years, so she may have some comments as well. But the draft was brought before you, and then it was sent out for review and comment through September 8th for public comments. We did not receive any comments on this one, but I did have the good fortune of attending one of their meetings recently, and you will note in the MSR the extensive list that they have of agencies that they cooperate or they share services or they combine grants with these other agencies. It's truly amazing, and that has increased since the MSR was written. I was so pleased at that meeting to hear they've gotten grants on climate action from universities, from the states. They're collaborating with other RCDs. It's really exemplary. So the sphere of influence for the agency does cover the entire county. There is, however, what we've termed a donut hole, which is the city of Napa. When the agency was developed, that portion was left out. So the district will be coming back to LAFCO to annex that area. But the recommendation in the report is to retain the sphere of influence as it is, to make no changes on that, and to accept and file the document and then adopt a resolution making the sphere of influence determinations, which are included in the report, and to accept that as well as the environmental review part of it. And sphere of influence reviews and updates are exempt from CEQA because there's no, other changes going on there. So that's our report and our recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. I just wanted to comment that I was really amazed by really reading through this and everything, exactly what you said, everything that they have done and involved with. So I'm looking forward to the donut hole getting kind of closed up and it's kind of an island, right? So
Yes.
that will be great to kind of see that. Yeah, very complimentary of the report. The district, really great. Any commission questions? Okay, Commissioner Painter.
Thank you. And yeah, I did serve on that board for 16 years. I started when I was 12. And yeah, the work is exemplary, and it's only going to continue. I really have, but that's not really what we're here to talk about. I did want to just bring up that in our August meeting, when we reviewed this MSR, we talked about 2 things. We talked about the donut hole annexation, and we talked about the Cullinan Ranch in Solano County. Both of which are mentioned in the report, but neither are really emphasized in a way that makes it clear that there's logical boundary considerations for the donut hole annexation. I don't think there's plans at this point for the de-annexation of Cullinan Ranch, but I think it might be worthwhile to at least consider a little bit more language in the report itself that would emphasize how important both of those are. I'd be happy to work with staff or do that. I'm not suggesting major revisions to the plan. I think otherwise it's really good. But having come this far on this project, I do think the report should be a little more clear with respect to why both of those are considered, potential future actions. And again, and Gary, you can comment on this. I don't think it's going to affect the associated resolutions and documents that would go along with it. It would simply be an opportunity to make it clear in the report. And I can show you a couple of examples in the report itself where I think we could strengthen the language. If you have it in front and want to pull it up on page 7 of the report, it talks about service boundary issues and acknowledges that RCD desires to annex portions. I think technically RCD has already started filing that application. I think the application was filed when I was still on the board, so it's been an ongoing issue. But within that paragraph, I think we could add some language that would strengthen the fact that the annexation would be considered a logical boundary adjustment.
I would love to hear
Yeah, chiming in.
Attorney
There was a
Bell's,
question there. So,
be able
yes,
to bring this back to do that, or is there a workaround?
I do believe that you can change if there's particular language that you want to add and still adopt it. Yes.
And that would be my recommendation, that we just work that, and staff can either do it or I'd be happy to take a look at it, but we've come this far. I think it's really important that before we put this to print, that it be clear with respect to both of those issues.
Yes.
And other than that, I think if we can move forward with a recommendation, I'm happy to make that unless anybody else has comment.
So just a question, so that's what I have. It's like, that when that language goes in and it hasn't really been reviewed by the board, where are we with this?
Yeah, so to clarify and give a little more detail there, if there's particular language that you all can agree on at this meeting, that would be my recommendation, is to add it all in before the vote is taken so that it is clear what you all are approving.
I had one other, I support Commissioner Painter's idea. I think that's helpful language to have in. And the only other thought that I had that I would love to see, one of the things that's talked about in here is one of RCD's challenges is its reliance on grant funding. And, so if it's a good grant year, there's more opportunity. But I think also what the recommendations are contemplating, but it's not as clearly stated as it could be, is the need for sort of longer term funding, to suggest that they look at multi-year grants or something like that. So I don't know if that's worth adding in, but that would be, that was one thing I was kind of looking for to help them smooth out their planning.
Do we know that they're not using multi-year grants?
I know I can comment on that, at least for the years that I served on the RCD board. Many, if not, I wouldn't say all, but many, probably the majority of the grants were multi-year, because this is work that doesn't happen in 1 year. Typically, if you're looking at, I'll use an example of the work that was associated with the Rutherford Dust Society. That was probably a decade's worth of work. So I think that's always a part of work like this, because it's just takes a long time.
So that's great. I think that addresses my consideration of an addition that maybe doesn't need to be in there.
Any other thoughts from the commission before we start working on some language? No, I see no public, so no more public comment on this item. So Beth, are you in a position where you can propose language?
The language that came to mind to me with respect to what LAFCO does is to talk about logical and orderly development, where if on page 7 we added something along the lines, and this would be the last sentence, where it says annexation of this area would allow for Napa RCD's boundary to accurately reflect the geographic scope. If we could add language that said annexation of this area is considered logical and orderly development and would allow for Napa RCD's boundary to accurately reflect. It would help feed into ultimately what we're going to be looking at. I think honestly that's somewhat the easy fix. I don't have language on the Cullinan Ranch because that gets a little more complicated because then you are talking about a change to the SOI, right?
Right.
So
Can we just leave that out then
perhaps
for
we
now?
just leave that alone because it's been in the RCD's boundaries for decades, but at least we acknowledge in this report that it's in Solano County, and that's already done.
Okay. Okay, that's pretty easy. I just have one question. You mentioned adding in on page 7, the boundaries equal geographic scope. What do you mean by geographic scope? Or how is that different than the boundaries? I mean, I agree with the concept. I'm just trying to be really certain I understand
Well,
what we're...
the way that I would explain it, and I'll just defer to staff a little bit, but RCD, for example, has contracts with the city of Napa to do stream gauge monitoring, to do educational work, and that's, so annexation of this donut hole would align with the work that's within.
Oh, you're
geographic
referring
boundaries.
specifically to that. I think you
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah,
that. Okay,
yeah.
okay, now I got it. All right.
Okay.
But that's also, pardon me, that's also within the description, right?
Yes.
That's directly from it. It says annexation of this area would allow for RCD's boundary to accurately reflect the geographic scope of current programming. That's directly from the report. So I think that that is all encompassing.
So are you saying you want it in the text as an addition to where it is now?
What I'm suggesting is that we.
I'm just trying to
amend-
get around maybe coming back. Maybe,
Yeah, no, I'm.
maybe we're just
suggesting
cutting
that we
something
not
that's
come
already
back,
in there
Simply.
and putting it in a new area. Would that be a minor enough change?
I think the proposal is to add something to that sentence, though, if I'm hearing you correctly. So if the commission agrees to add that language in, then we can just make a note of those changes as we go, and as long as it's clear to the whole commission, resolution stays the same, and you all can adopt it today.
Right? So I'm going to bring it back for commission decision. So anybody like to make a motion?
I move that we adopt the report and findings as amended.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes unanimously. Good job, RCD, and our staff for bringing that to us. And action items, we are not taking action on item 7A. 7B is adoption of our strategic plan that we've been working on at a strategic planning meeting, as well as talking about here at the commission. So can we get a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So, as the chair mentioned, the commission held a strategic planning workshop, which was facilitated by Pamela Miller back on July 10th. The draft strategic plan, which came out of that workshop, was presented at the commission's August 7th meeting, and that document generated a robust discussion about 7 specific goals and associated action items that were included at the time. And you can see the meeting minutes for the August 7th meeting for a summary of that discussion. And those minutes are on today's agenda. Chair Moeller and Vice Chair Cottrell agreed to advise staff in revising the strategic plan. And a meeting for this purpose was held on September 6th with Pamela Miller also attending. And following that meeting, a revised draft strategic plan which is before you today, now lists only 3 specific goals that will steer the Commission's focus over the next 2 years. And the remaining 4 goals that were in the preliminary draft strategic plan will be added to the annual work program and addressed by staff as administrative items. So stay tuned for that. The final 3 goals in the revised draft strategic plan are to understand how the 2020 countywide water and wastewater municipal service review, or MSR for short, may benefit the region. The second goal is to initiate and complete the countywide fire and emergency medical services MSR. And the third goal is to continue gaining greater LAFCO independence. And this third goal relates to item 7D on today's agenda that we'll be discussing soon. The revised draft strategic plan is included as an exhibit to the draft resolution, which is included as attachment 1 to the staff report. And with all of this in mind, staff recommends the Commission adopt the resolution, which would formally adopt Strategic Plan 2023-2025. And staff is happy to answer any questions.
All right. Do we have any commissioners who have questions? Seeing none at all, and we have no public. I'll bring it back for any final comments or a vote on our resolution. Commissioner Leary? Oh, Commissioner Painter? Okay.
I move we adopt the strategic LAFCO, Napa County LAFCO strategic plan for June 23 to June 25.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I was going to make one comment, if
Okay.
that's okay.
Sure.
I know it's hard to see everybody. I was trying to wave my hand. And that is that we really pared this back, and I'm in favor of that. I think that's a good thing. I think these are 3 things that we can really accomplish. Other things may come our way in the next 2 years, so I just wanted to just say for the record that this doesn't mean that this is all that LAFCO is going to be doing, and this doesn't mean that we're not going to look at other opportunities that we think make sense, but these are 3 goals that we know we really want to focus on. So with that, I'm happy to support, but I felt like since we did bring it in so much, I wanted to just make that point.
Thank you.
Well, I want to just say I agree with you. You know, the strategic planning meeting we had in July was fantastic, and a lot of ideas were put out there. And normally we would pare them down, and I think what we came up is just fantastic. And yeah, just looking forward to it.
All right, great. We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Anybody opposed or abstained? Nope. Thank you very much, Brendan, for leading us with that. We've got some pretty simply worded goals here, but they're certainly meat-packed with lots and lots of actions behind them, in addition to our other work and all the staff work that goes on. So thank you for moving this to completion. And action item C is consider adopting a selection of a consultant for the countywide, one of our goals, MSR on fire and EMS services. We get a staff report. I think Don will be, is Don going to do that, or Brendan's going to? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll handle this one. Just a bit of quick background that on August 7th, the Commission authorized the release of a request for proposals, or RFP for short, seeking a qualified consultant to prepare a countywide fire and emergency medical services MSR. The RFP was prepared with assistance from an ad hoc subcommittee that consists of Commissioners Cottrell and Painter, and staff received 2 proposals in response to that RFP, and the interviews have been scheduled for October 16th. The interview panel consists of LAFCO's ad hoc subcommittee and staff, along with Calistoga's city manager, the county fire chief, the City of Napa fire chief, and the American Canyon fire chief. So it was a bit of a haul to get everybody to agree to a date, but we did it, October 16th. Now, in order to prevent lengthy delays in initiating the MSR, staff recommends the commission take two related actions. Those actions would be to, number one, authorize the RFP committee to select a preferred consultant and negotiate a contract. And number two, authorize the commission chair to sign that contract. Alternative options are described in the staff report, and those would involve perhaps directing staff to schedule a special meeting so that the full commission can consider selecting a consultant and negotiating a contract, and then also authorize the chair to sign the contract. Or another option is to direct staff to return to the commission's December 4th regular meeting to consider all of these actions. So with all of that in mind, staff is happy to answer any questions. And again, the recommendation is to delegate the authority to select the consultant and negotiate a contract to our subcommittee.
Thank you very much. Quick question, how much do we have budgeted for that? We haven't completed the rest of the budget, correct?
So correct, we have budgeted $100,000. However, that's not going to be enough to cover the entire project, whoever we end up going with. So we will need to likely either adjust the budget for this fiscal year later, or simply budget the remainder next fiscal year, since I assume this work will continue well into the next fiscal year.
Thank you. And one last comment. When I was reading through the RFP that you sent out, it said on top of page 3, and I know this is already kind of water under the bridge, but it says that a draft report is expected to be completed by the selected consultant by 2 weeks prior to LAFCO's regularly scheduled meeting, June 3rd, 2023. And I think you meant 2024.
Good catch. Yep, we
Just,
missed
in case you
that.
write a contract, you might want to just remember that.
Yes.
When you cut and paste. And
Thank you, Madam Chair. We all missed that.
Yeah. And with that, any questions, comments? Let's see. Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Friedman, for the report. I had a couple of questions about, thank you for catching the date. And again, this scope has gone out, but also on page 3, when it sets out the scope of the project, item 6 is for the consultant to conduct a risk assessment. And I just kind of wondered if we could get an explanation of that, because that's a big piece, and the county does already do its own risk assessment. So I just want to make sure that we're not asking for and then going to need to pay for something that is already in place or something like that. So if you could help me understand that a little bit. And then one other thing I just want to bring up on the top of page 5, number 9, it says that Napa LAFCO staff will be responsible for obtaining information from the volunteer agencies as needed. And I just want to make sure that we're still expecting the consultant to be driving that interaction, and that doesn't sit, just on LAFCO staff shoulders.
Now, Dawn, if you would be so kind and willing to respond. I think you're better suited to this.
Sure. So with regard to the risk assessment, I realize that the county has done risk assessments, and I know some of the recent master plans that were conducted also included some risk assessment. And so that's one of the reasons in the document that it states that any existing or planned studies would be incorporated into the document. So it's really sort of a risk assessment for those areas that haven't really been, considered. The good thing about the risk assessment is then people understand. I know the county at one point had mentioned the possibility of maybe a tax measure, a funding measure, and when people realize the risk out there, not only the businesses and so forth, but also the impact on employees and all of that, all of those other things that get tied in if there's a loss of significant resources. So it sort of helps the public understand the importance of protecting those resources.
Got it. So that's helpful clarification. So we can imagine that when the report comes back, it will have a risk assessment section that says we took what already exists out there and built on it and filled in the gaps as we
Exactly.
needed. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That's
Yes.
great.
And then with respect to the volunteers, part of the reason that I included that in there was because when we had the water wastewater study done throughout the county, there were some very small agencies with no staff and so forth, and getting information from them was extremely difficult, and it held up the study by quite a bit. So since I've worked a lot with volunteer fire districts, kind of talked the language and stuff, we felt it was appropriate that I go ahead and offer, if as a backup, let me put it that way, if they're having difficulty getting that information, that I could go and take care of that. And that will save us time, because we're always with these kind of reports watching fire season, and when will everybody be available to provide this information, that sort of thing.
Got it. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank Commissioner Cottrell for her comments, because I had a totally different opinion about the risk assessment. I really didn't know it was like fire and, some business person or, resident kind of economics. I mean, I really thought it was going to be, let's just say this report, and it's really just going to be the facts. A lot of people are scared, just like they were with the water wastewater MSR. But I thought there might be something, and maybe some conclusions or findings. For example, if a city was paying X amount of, 50% of their budget, just throwing out numbers here, for paying for, their fire and EMS services, that a finding would be that this is not sustainable.
Yeah.
And so I thought it would be that kind of a risk assessment. So
Well-
should that be part of it?
No, that's a very good point, because that actually gets into the feasibility piece of the study.
Right.
Because there'll be definitely an economic piece and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense and so forth. So you're absolutely right. That would be included in that portion.
So, so it's a conclusion from risk assessment, there might be a conclusion or a recommendation, I should say, that, if you have 18 little volunteer fire departments, that they come together, or like some of these smaller counties, they've got fire departments all over the place, that they, really kind of merge and, do things like
Exactly.
that. Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
So it's really all of those is risk assessment.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Khan. Go first.
So I have a question, since we have removed the proposed Green Island annexation, and now you're working on this. How does that decision influence what's in the countywide MSR and what isn't? Because this sounds like it's going to take place maybe before that other decision about American Canyon. So I'm just questioning, because they might be looking at something and all of a sudden something comes along and changes it. So we should just be prepared, at least, or advise them that there's potential change. Now, my understanding in reading the document, which we didn't vote on today, was that the American Canyon's been providing that service since 1992. So it's just a question of maybe, what their sphere is. But in any case, I just kind of wanted to put that on the table, that whoever's doing that should know that there's this other potential change coming, and at least maybe plan for it in their discussion. Thank you.
Commissioner Ramos.
I think a couple of things in terms of background. One thing that I don't see noted on the background, it does have the previous MSR and study areas. But I think another vital thing to include is the grand jury report recently on our volunteer fire services. So I think that that needs to be incorporated in here. When it comes to fire service providers, on a technicality, it says County of Napa Fire, but by the time this rolls out, we will have hired our fire services administrator. And fire services is going to be separate from Napa County Fire. So I would like that to be reflected as a stakeholder specifically, as one is, internal, one is, kind of external. When it comes to the MSR and SOI study areas on number 6 for the conducting the risk assessment, I do think risk assessment is just far too wide of a category. I think that we should look at delineating this further to saying, wildfire risk, because that's really what we're looking at is wildfire risk. We're not looking at, urbanized structural fire risk. We're looking at that's, a building code thing. I think we're looking at wildfire risk. And we're looking at the provision of public safety response times as a risk, especially as we get into some of our more rural areas. And I think we look at economic feasibility risk as 3 separate type of categories so that, it's not just like, we're not looking at workers' comp risk necessarily, right? I think we need to look at it in the context of fire services and emergency management services, and that would help us kind of shore it up.
I have a comment that you brought it up with fire risk versus wildfire risk. And just a comment, I know for Yountville, our current fire contract went up significantly, more than almost 40%. And the reason was mostly personnel, but they needed, in addition to a list of things the additional personnel would be doing, they really made a note about the real potential economic risk in Yountville, and with our residents, a wildfire, especially the Veterans Home is right up there, is a wildfire coming from there, or any other fire in a big hotel is going to have a really big impact on what a small little fire station manned the way it was. So maybe I'd be fine with fire or wildfire, including wildfires, or I don't know. I'm just thinking it's wildfires alone is probably as exclusive as just fires as designation. So maybe if there's some way, because I agree it's not residential fires, but it's
what I would say. I think that response gets us there. The reason why I don't want to go down the path of just saying fire and structural fire is I then think we get into building adequacy and code compliance issues. When we just say fire in general, I think just really limiting that scope to wildfires, which we know are coming, and then if we go and include response times, because I think that's what really impacts structural fire defense is response times and availability of equipment. And I think that gives us a good enough parameter. What I just don't want someone to see this and say, oh, we're conducting a risk assessment of everything that could possibly be related to fire. We're really looking at
So I'm fine with that. Staff can figure out some terminology, wildfire and response time for municipal fires.
And I think,
Something.
Go ahead, you go.
Risk assessment's gonna
Yeah,
get redefined
couple of
here.
things
Commissioner
that I
Payne.
just want to point out, serving on the subcommittee with Commissioner Cottrell, what we're looking at and fine tuning here has already gone out and been responded to. So we have these 2 firms that have filed information. We'll be looking at them depending on how we decide how to move forward with that. But what this discussion is telling me is that I think we will have some more work to do in terms of fine-tuning the final content of the report. I also think we don't, and I agree with, obviously, the risk of wildfire is something that is on all of our minds, and it impacts cities, it impacts the county, it impacts us from the perspective of employment and all kinds of things. We're also looking at EMS, and I will say for the city of Napa, we do a lot of EMS work through our fire department. So there's a lot of complicated pieces that are going to be looked at with this when we get to that point. But rather than revising what has already gone out and been responded to, maybe we just need to be mindful that we may need to look at changing some of the final reports, and maybe for us, those of us on the subcommittee, some feedback before we enter into interviews.
Yeah, that's my feeling. I think this is a great discussion, and like you're saying, that this has already gone out, but the contract hasn't been drafted yet, and nor have the interviews happened. So this kind of information, if there's agreement on this board, then this commission, then that information can be taken into the discussions with the potential RFP respondents. And that way we don't have to wordsmith this. We can just take that direction from you all.
Yeah.
Does that?
I'm totally fine with that, because I would like to ask them, we does risk assessment. Of course, in the RFP, it's more detailed than that. So, what kind of things do they usually do in risk assessment?
Generally speaking, the risk assessment for this type of study, especially with an MSR as opposed to maybe a master plan or a standards of coverage is going to get into more details of like code compliance and that sort of thing, and what do they need, whereas this is not such a deep dive into that. It's really more of, if your hotels were lost, if your wineries were lost, if, so many of the buildings downtown were lost, it's that kind of thing. What impact, what risk does that have on the community?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a higher level review.
Okay.
And I think, just to look at another one, item number 8 says, analyze and provide recommendations for alternative governance structures. We're not asking them to create a new kingdom for fire response or something like that. So I think all of the conversations we're having can be helping provide guardrails for what the ultimate report looks like.
Exactly. Yes.
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Cottrell. I think that was a great way to kind of put it all together.
Yes.
So I guess you can tell them that there's a high level of interest in risk assessment. So it'd be great when, after your interviews, maybe you can bring it back who you chose and what they're addressing on that. I think that might be helpful. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Painter?
I'll let Commissioner Leary
Okay,
go.
Larry?
Now, Commissioner Carn brought up a great observation about the American Canyon expansion and looking at the sphere of influence. You just mentioned March, new hotel, Yountville, and changing that. I'm not sure whether or not the report's going to look into Watson Ranch and all those things planned for down at American Canyon, the new amphitheater, the hotel, and all of that. It seems like there's a lot on the horizon that will affect this report, and maybe there should be something included in there where they look at the plans and what's coming forward, and have that some analysis in the report.
Okay, good thought. Commissioner Painter?
Well, I'm kind of going back to the direction that I think staff is looking for from us. I think we've learned that there are these, this is a really important study, and we're going to, first I just want to acknowledge, I would agree with Commissioner Leary that you have to be looking at not just what's existing on the ground, but what is coming in the foreseeable future. And so there will be a lot of unanswered questions, but trying to bring this back to direct staff. Serving on the subcommittee, I don't want to necessarily make the recommendation, is where I was going. I'd like to see what you think we should do with respect to bringing this back, having the subcommittee move forward with the contract, or bringing this back.
Okay. Well, I think these are really good kind of discussions, you know, especially with, you know, the county fire district that'll be coming back as well. I think, you know, regardless of what city it's in or what happens to it, it's probably not going to change that much, or maybe it might. So, you know, I think foreseeable future documents are fine. And, you know, I think it will cost us a lot if we have to send, you know, staff and our consultant out digging around. So I'll leave it up to staff to make a decision in my mind about, you know, what you know. You probably have more, you know, insight into imminent future of kind of what's going on. I know you just have to read the paper to see how much building is going on in American Canyon. You got, you know, it's amazing. Well, I'm just driving through Napa. It's amazing. But, you know, these are two big cities that have a lot of land. So,
Yes.
yeah, it's quite significant. So
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I don't know. Commissioner Cottrell, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that was a good, I appreciate that observation that we need to look at foreseeable future things. I'm with Commissioner Painter that because I'm on the subcommittee, I feel awkward in making the motion, but I will also say I feel comfortable, given what we've done today, to feel like we have direction from you all to embark on this next phase of doing the interviews and proceeding with the steps as laid out. But yeah, I'm going to look to the two of you, if that feels comfortable to you, to make that motion.
I'm fine with you making the motion. I have, thank you for all the work you've done. I'm glad, it sounds like you're going to continue on, which is also good. I'm just, you know, kind of, I know this is not, hopefully our timeline of 2 weeks before the June 24th meeting is really going to work, you know, but I think you do need to have a good timeline there, but you'll probably be able to come back to the commission if seeing how things kind of go. And also, you know, with our budget, I think we've got some ballpark numbers where these reports are. So if we start adding a lot, you know, it kind of throws those numbers out there too. So we'll leave it to our staff and our
All right.
commission
Well, I think
committee to-
you need a motion, right?
Yes, we need
Okay,
a motion.
I'll go ahead and make that motion then.
We have a second? I'm looking your way.
Second.
Ah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? That passes unanimously. All right, so that is staff recommended we divide this into two parts. And now part two, we're going to authorize the commission chair, that's me, to sign the contract.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? That passes unanimously. All right, on to action item D, which is consider options to amend the agreement for the provision of support services. Yes, we've been talking about this a long time. I'm glad we're still talking. We have a staff report from,
Assistant Executive Officer Dawn Longoria.
all right, thank you, John.
All right, there's one thing I want to really start out with here and make it very clear that when we discuss being independent from the county, Napa LAFCO works very, very hard at keeping a very good cooperative working relationships with the counties, the cities, the districts, the stakeholders, and this is not in any way intended to affect that cooperative working arrangement. I go back to a little bit of history on LAFCOs when they were first set up, and basically the concept being that LAFCOs need to be neutral in their analysis, in their decisions. You know, it's that the commissioners take off their hat and they think of the county as a whole, that sort of thing. And so the independence goes along with that. Originally, when LAFCOs were formed in the 60s, the idea was that it was going to be a state organization and funded by the state. But in fact, the counties objected, the counties and cities objected, and were concerned that a state agency would be coming in and telling the local area what the boundaries should be and so forth. So at first it was the counties funded LAFCOs. And then later on, various organizations, the League, the grand jury, local activist groups complained that that particular arrangement created a conflict of interest. Because if LAFCO staff were county staff, and especially legal counsel, that then their jobs depended on what they recommended, and so they weren't really free to make recommendations that might be in counter to what the county wanted. So with this, in about the 1990s, there was new legislation that came in that revamped the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, added the Hertzberg in there. But anyway, and in that act, it stated that LAFCOs were to be independent. It's required for us to be independent. And so there was a push then about that time period for a number of different LAFCOs, first to get independent legal counsel. That was one of the first steps. And then also to get, oftentimes to get separate staff. Now in 2003, Napa LAFCO became independent and arrange for a support services agreement with the county, and then also to have independent legal counsel. So in 2015, the commission held a workshop, and one of the main subjects of that workshop was to achieve independence from the county, and commissioners were assigned. An ad hoc committee was put together to work on that and draft amendments to that support services agreement were underway. But then about that time, there was a change in LAFCO staff, and it just sort of fell off the wayside. And so then our legal counsel was appointed, and then more recently in working on this support services agreement, which has just an almost endless number of amendments to it. It got amended every year, but never really renegotiated, or really the breadth of it changed. So most recently, in June of 2022, the commission approved a budget and 2 staff positions, the assistant executive officer and the clerk junior analyst, and those positions were approved by the commission, and then the budget reflected that approval. And legal counsel advised that the contract specified that the county would provide the staff that the commission determined, and that the commission set within its budget. And unfortunately, even with that information behind us, it took over 9 months for us to finally fill those positions. And it really had so much to do with the county staff not understanding that LAFCO is an independent agency, and that the commission has the authority to make those decisions. And unfortunately, during that time, there were only 2 of us trying to cover all the work. We really needed a full-time clerk, junior analyst, and instead, it was just the 2 of us trying to fill in everything. And quite frankly, the work program suffered because of that lack of staffing. So that's big piece of it. And then the other piece is just the bookkeeping system is perfect for the county, I'm sure, because this is a large organization. They have all sorts of projects that funds have to be assigned to and so forth. It very much fits their needs. But unfortunately for LAFCO, it takes a tremendous amount of staff time, and our financial needs are very minimal. So those are two important things. And so at the strategic planning session most recently, then once again, the concept of being independent from the county and renegotiating this contract came to the front. And so the recommendation here is that the commission provide direction to staff, and that if the commission wishes to assign an ad hoc committee to work with staff and to work with county staff on renegotiating this contract. And it would be smart if it would be one of our county representatives that might be involved in this subcommittee, because certainly they understand the workings of the county staff. So that's basically this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I just have a couple quick questions, and then I'll go to the commission. So the MOU, this is all for our attorney. Is that considered a contract?
Yes.
Okay, so I looked in there. I think it's got some continuation, and when I look at these things, and it has, first of all, it was done eons ago, and there are that many amendments, and you can't even read them, and you don't know what fits in where. It is time to modernize this contract. So, are we renegotiating the current contract, or are we just revising an update, or is there a difference? What are we doing here?
So there's a couple different ways to approach this. You have an existing agreement, and the commission would likely like to keep the current agreement in place and then change it in some substantive way. So I would imagine what would come out of that is like an amended and restated agreement, where you keep the stuff you want, revise the stuff you want changed, and include the new things that you're looking for into a single document, which would then be approved by the County Board of Supervisors and then also come back to this commission.
All right, and I just want to make another comment on what our assistant executive officer said about having county supervisors who also sit on LAFCO be willing, because they speak the county language, and just from a historical perspective, I know I've been sitting here a long time. We've been talking about this a long time. A lot of things, there were a lot of humps in the road and big bumps in the road. We finally got two of the LAFCO commissioners who were also county supervisors, attend a couple meetings, and several things went lickety-split all of a sudden. So I would just, if we decide to go this way, just another quick question for staff. Commissioner Ramos has left. Can we appoint her, just in case? That's where we want
That was
to go.
absolutely going to be my suggestion.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Just
You
nothing
leave the
wrong with-
room.
I know it was going to be a little more complicated scheduling supervisor's time. These are also LAFCO commissioner time, but it might be wise in the end. So those are just my thoughts there. Questions, Commissioner Painter?
Thank you for that. I 100% agree. I also think if our chair had the willingness and opportunity to participate, that history is so important, because I think in combination with the knowledge of what the county has, I think the knowledge of what CalLAFCO could offer, because every county, and first of all, thank you, Dawn, for that history. I don't think we're the only LAFCOs in the state who have gone through this kind of, transitions from, being totally dependent on the county. Your explanation that at one point the state was going to have some agency that was going to be the state LAFCO. I think that's one of the could be potentially one of the best resources for us is looking at LAFCO to determine what some other counties and what some other LAFCOs have done to try to create that good relationship. I'm 100% in agreement that, however it works, if it's amended and restated, but what you had ended up as 200 pages in our report, I think, because there were so many documents going through, 2003, 2006, 2000, on and on. So it's time to sort of first meet as a subcommittee and determine what's the right framework for this relationship, and then working with Gary and working with, the county staff, come up with that. So I'm going to just propose, if you are willing, that you and Commissioner Ramos maybe consider serving on that subcommittee.
Well, thank you very much for all the high regard for my ability to be on the subcommittee. However, I've been doing this so long that I think I might lose my temper in some of these meetings. And I also really believe that 2 county supervisors just doubles the emphasis, which is really what I'm looking for. And I think if we have that, they will do more than I can. And to your point about my experience with LAFCO, there's a listserv that all 58 county, Napa County LAFCOs have. They communicate all the time. I'm sure Brendan can kind of tell you about that. So if that kind of information is out there, and it is, they can pull that up quite easily to see, investigate what some of the other ones are doing. Because that's pretty much most of what I would do, is just identify some of those. But his lister is even probably better and more knowledgeable, because it contains exactly what we're looking for instead of other boards and commission members. So.
And I appreciate that, and I understand sort of that notion, but I think because we're LAFCO and we're taking off our hats in terms of city and county functions, perhaps Commissioner Leary, who has served on LAFCO for a number of years, might do it. I think that perspective of something other than county might be beneficial, just in my mind. But if you think that 2 county supervisors would be better, I'm certainly open to thinking about that.
And that was certainly my experience. It was these county supervisors, well, I think really when a county employee sees an elected come in, they know this is an important meeting. And there's a lot of stuff. It just changes the dynamic.
It does.
Not to say that Commissioner Leary wouldn't do a fine job at this, but, staff, Donna, do you have a question or a comment?
Well, I apologize. I should have mentioned that we have been reaching out to other LAFCOs and to other independent agencies to find out the things they've done. And then I was executive officer at Marin LAFCO for 8 years, and in that time period, we did become independent from the county. And I must say, the way we got things moving to actually be able to hire our clerk junior analysts was because one of the county supervisors came into that staff meeting with us, and then things did move very quickly after that. So it is true.
Yeah. So I'm just basing it on conversations I had with, Brendan, about all of a sudden light years happened in a few months.
Yes.
Once we appointed that. Commissioner Khan.
Well, in a couple of weeks, many of us are going to be in a meeting with a whole lot of LAFCOs. And so if we could maybe get a sense of some of them who have done this, take that opportunity, sit with them for coffee or whatever, and make some connections, that might speed up some of the information. And then my thought of having only the county people is that, I'll let you tell me, but because Bellio's not here, but if I was sitting in your seat, there might be some suspicion that with 2 of you making those decisions, either the county's going to feel the pressure, or they're going to feel,
That's
or
fine.
we're going to feel it. So I think it would be nice to have someone, and Ken's been around a long time, if he would be willing to do that.
So first of all, I appreciate the point of what being able to have at least one supervisor as part of this. I think that makes a ton of sense. I think I do agree with this point that maybe doing the combo, because there are going to be things in here that we want to push forward as LAFCO commissioners, and we're going to get pushback from the county, whether it's about the bookkeeping or something like that. So with that, I think it probably does make sense to have one county and one non-county. I also like this idea of seeing what we can learn from the conference and look at those items. So I understand. I was thinking of you also, Chair, but I understand. I hear what you're saying. And
Remember
so,
my first comment?
Yeah, yeah. So again, if I could ask staff, so it makes a lot of sense to me that we just need to get it exactly what Mr. Bell said, amend and restate, and just shrink this thing down, update it. But there probably will be things, I don't know if we're using, if we have to use job classifications from the county, or what kinds of things you're hoping besides the restatement that we might get out of this.
Yeah.
We do not want that.
We're at this point because of two things that have happened in the past, and that was getting the positions we wanted and having them call what we wanted. And it seems to me it was a lack of knowledge by staff to the independence of LAFCO. And then they had to be reminded. So it seems to me that the county could do better in terms of informing the staff about LAFCO, its independence, and when they need something, in terms of staffing, it doesn't have to match our system. Now, the cost center problem is I think is a bigger problem, because cost centers are rigid, and the county has a rigid system there, like any system, and us fitting into that, because we wanted some budget considerations for certain items, and we couldn't do that. That probably is going to take a lot more negotiation and work and learning from the other LAFCOs. But I think the first one is just a matter of their boss there in that department letting them know that LAFCO's independent, and if they have staffing needs that they want to call them whatever they want, they get to do that. And I think it might just be as easy as that. If not, then we get the two exec to Brendan to meet with the county administrator and let him know that, show the information. But I think it might be just simple as that.
I do have some information on the budget. When I was talking to Commissioner Ramos, she understands her budget because she's been on there quite a bit, and she really likes numbers, kind of like I do. And she said that there are different projects. We're in a project code that doesn't allow reserves.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's why I think both county supervisors, because I'm too busy, so I'm going to thank everybody very much, but I'm still going to push back for both county supervisors. Also, maybe one can come, both can come, but I really think, and they can come back. We can always revise this later if there is an issue like has been kind of brought up. I'm willing to, reconsider and maybe revise the structure. But I think we start out strong with our county supervisor representatives. Commissioner Boehner.
Well, I really want to follow up on Commissioner Khan's comment, which is, bringing in another representative that's non-county, I think also carries a lot of weight. And yes, I think that the supervisor who shows up is going to be a very important part of that meeting. But if Commissioner Leary was willing, I think he's got a really good grasp of the history and the issues. And I think it then represents us as LAFCO a little bit more equitably, because it's important to all of us. This relationship and how this moves forward is important to not just the county, but it's important to all 5 cities. And it's important for LAFCO staff as to how all this moves forward. So I really think it could be a powerful combination if Commissioner Leary was willing. And I would just consider making the motion, and I know Commissioner Ramos isn't here, but that's what happens when you leave early, I guess, of appointing a subcommittee of Commissioner Leary and Commissioner Ramos to move forward on this effort.
You know, I believe I could represent LAFCO Commission independently, and that I would provide a strong, let's see, first word that came to my mind was bite, but, push for, the needs of LAFCO, and has a separate independent organization. And I think that's the argument, and then figuring out how to achieve that. And if our supervisor, who is also chair, has a knowledge of cost centers and things, it may just be as simple as amending the thing to provide for us in a project to have cost centers. Yeah, so it may not be as difficult as we are bringing it out, because the research we've had so far, it might just be just a matter of sitting down and saying, hey, look. And with 3 supervisors on there, if it ever came to them, I think our supervisors would just say, hey.
Okay,
I
with
think-
that enthusiasm, I'm going to second them.
Right.
I was just going to say I'm in support also, but I like Commissioner Leary's other point, I think, that you made of having Brendan meet with the new CEO, because I think we could gain a lot of ground, or build a good foundation for whatever the subcommittee decides to do. And I don't think that gets out over our skis. I think it could just be a good preliminary meeting. So I'd suggest that also.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? That passes unanimously. So what we just passed was that we are going to form a subcommittee, and we have Commissioner Ramos, and it's going, if she happens to not accept that, Commissioner Cottrell.
I'm happy to be a backup, but I
We
do
have-
think she's a great choice,
Okay.
given her history and her expertise in this area. I think it's
Okay.
a good fit. But you're right. I think we should be prepared for other options too.
Okay, so with that, is that enough discussion for staff?
Thank you.
Okay, and we made that recommendation and nominations. Is that an official ad hoc committee?
It is, yes.
Okay, so we have formed an ad hoc committee. All right, and we have an alternate that could be used once you talk to supervisor, well, in this case, Commissioner Ramos. All right, thank you very much. Our last action item today, we are going to consider the adjustment to the executive officer's compensation. So I'm going to turn this over to Gary, but I just want to remind the commission that Commissioner Ramos and I, with this board's direction, met with Brendan, and we negotiated his salary. We brought that back as the recommendation, I think, at our last meeting. So now I'm going to turn over to our attorney, who's going to talk to us about reporting out and what we're reporting.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. As required by the Brown Act, a brief oral report of the action and what's before you this afternoon. Before you is a resolution regarding your executive officer salary. It would provide for a 3.5% cost of living increase and a 3.5% merit-based increase for a total salary $176,934.13. That number is slightly different than the number that's in the agenda and in the resolution, but still within substantial compliance for your action this afternoon. So we'd request, as part of your approval, should you do so, that you also direct staff to change the number that I just stated as part of the oral report. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, why is the number different?
We did the percentage calculation this afternoon, right before we were starting, and realized that it was, what is in your agenda packet is approximately
So it's math. It's just a math error.
$50 or so. Yeah, it's a math
Okay.
error.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you. Brendan, do you have any comments?
So just if you're curious where the original number that's in the packet came from, that was in my letter of self-evaluation that I'd sent out, and that was my request, was that specific dollar amount. Just simply did the wrong math on the 7%, and so we just caught it today. I just want to extend my gratitude and sincere thanks to the commission for working with me on this. I look forward to hopefully many more years of great work.
All right. So with that, any commission comments, questions? Seeing none, how about a
I'll make
motion?
Motion of approval.
A
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? That passes unanimously. Congratulations, Brendan. In honor of your birthday, I guess. So, with that, commissioner comments or requests for future agenda items? Seeing none, then we.
I'll just say thanks to everyone who's going to the LAFCO conference. And is that, who is going? You're going? You're going, great. Okay, so looking forward to report when you.
I'm running for reelection.
Oh, we have to
Oh,
say
it's
report,
gonna be
okay.
my, I can't remember which term, so. And Commissioner Leary is also running for the coastal public member for the Cal LAFCO board, so.
Do we have T-shirts made? LAFCO?
Well, you know,
Get my-
Brendan always comes up with this. One time he brought some plastic teeth and we left them all over all the rooms, so, but,
So for those of us who are going, if there are things that you want, you know, 'cause not everybody's gonna be there, but if
can you
want,
speak into your mic?
You know, some.
Eve, can you speak into your
Oh, I'm
mic?
sorry, I turned it over. Sorry. So there are gonna be a few of us there, and if there's things that you would like us, as we talked about, you know, talking about how other LAFCOs, just let us know so we don't all go to the same places at the same time, if we can split that up. So I just thought I would pass that along, because there are, well, you have the experience of Marin, but if you know who else has been doing that recently, it'd be good, you know, at least understand where the bumps in the road might be, where some of the negotiation took place. Hopefully their success rate, but it would be good to find out, you know, if somebody tried to do that and failed. And so it'd be good to know from both sides, so we don't have to spend that energy trying to figure out, you know, just say, hey, now we know maybe what to ask for or not ask for. So just a thought while we're there. Anything we can do that bring back that helps us. I mean, you know, I've learned a lot from being there, and because I think when I just first came on, that came up very quickly, and it was really helpful for me. I spent a lot of time, you know, going to like LAFCO 101 and talking to people, and we were putting together some printed material, and some of the people said, hey, we just finished this if you want to use it. So it really was helpful for me to kind of understand what's going on around the state. So if we can bring that back, anything, just let us know.
And Gary and I have served on the planning conference committee. We just wrapped up our 12th and last Zoom on that this morning. So it's really going to be a lot of great material, I think, and great sessions. And if you see any fun names you laugh at, it probably came from me, because I, you know, thought that would be catchy. So anyway, we'll see. So Gary, you want to talk about your session just briefly?
Yeah, I'll just add that Brendan is also on that planning
Yes.
committee.
Right,
And
he's
so
doing-
we're all,
That's right.
three of us, Napa LAFCO's heavily represented, which is great. So we are doing the first general session, which is on Government Code 56133, which is how all LAFCOs approve or not services outside of jurisdictional boundaries. And there's a couple proposals out there for how that statute might be changed, and some different LAFCOs are adopting policies and administering it in different ways. So your executive officer has graciously agreed to be on the panel, which I'm very happy for. And also San Diego LAFCO's executive officer, Keen Simons, will also be on the committee, as well as a general counsel, a partner at Best and Krieger, Joshua Nelson, will also be on the panel. So it'll be a great discussion about what the statute says, how we can think about it, how it might be changed, and we're looking forward to it.
Good.
And I want to just shout out to our exec. He's doing another session. He's chairing it, and it's on LAFCOs and commissioners working with the exec. And it's going to be a great session, and I'll be in it with Brendan. Yes, so we're looking forward to that. And then I want to give a shout out to Gary. If you watch the LAFCO presentation on incorporation, it was long, but I tell you, this guy is sharp. Yes, I tell you, his knowledge was just, yeah, he's just knowledge-based and knows a lot. So we're fortunate to have you, and anytime we can pick your brain, we'll be picking it. All right.
And we're going to make arrangements at the awards banquet to kind of sit together. Napa County LAFCO is being nominated for 3 awards this year. So very exciting, and we'll kind of see how things go. So it'd be great to have if we get any winning, a lot of cheering will be greatly appreciated. And champagne will be in my room afterwards if,
That's right.
if that happens. So as chair, a major responsibility. So with that, and the program is going to the printers tonight, and so it'll be, the final one will be coming out soon, but see everybody there, because we're not going to meet before that. So with that, meeting's adjourned.